interesting Armenian gentleman whose name is G.I. Gurdjieff. And Mr. Gurdjieff wrote some books, and then he was followed by a man named Ouspensky and some others. And they were doing some kind of transformational work. And in the old days, they called it spiritual, but I don't use the word spiritual anymore because it's kind of religious, and it's not religious at all. Transformation, you can throw away religion because it's all written down, a gobbledygook that's been passed down through the centuries, and to try and say that it's relevant today, no, it's not. But Mr. Gurdjieff did use some names from traditional religion in his book. And the name he used was Bealzebub, who, well, in the book, he doesn't seem like an evil demon, but if you hear the story, you might change your mind. Now, let's see, where shall I begin? So, Bealzebub, in Mr. Gurdjieff's book, is, well, we don't know exactly what he is, but he's got a spaceship. And he flies from star system to star system with his grandson on a grand tour. And he gives lectures to his grandson, and these are the ones that get put into Mr. Gurdjieff's book. And it's a very long book, and apparently Mr. Gurdjieff, who was an Armenian, English would have been a second or third language for him. Very difficult book to get through. It would be like if you've ever tried to read James Joyce's Ulysses, which is always thrown in your face as marvel of literature. James Joyce's book it's intelligible, unintelligible. It just means it was written by someone who was touched in the head, and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And Mr. Gurdjieff's book is not, well, it's much better than Joyce, but it's still not an easy read. On the scale of difficulty, if 10 is the most difficult book, it's about a 9.5. So, just so you know. And if you do try and tackle the book, well, I did read it at one time, and then recently I found that there was an audio copy on YouTube, and what I like to do is drive around and play YouTube lectures and stories and listen to that while I'm driving around. So that's what I did, and I listened to this audio book, and you have to go and have a commentator give you some kind of insight as to what the heck he's talking about. And if you were in grade 9 or 9th grade and you hadn't read a lot of books, this book would be nary impossible to figure it out. Children have a hard time trying to figure out Shakespeare because it's in Middle English. But Gurdjieff's book, it's not meant to be read as your first book. It's a book that's to be read after you have read a whole pile, a lifetime of different kinds of books, so that you can try and interpret what he's saying using the database of all the other books that you've read. And that's how I become the commentator for Mr. Gurdjieff's book. And it is a very, very long audio lecture. It goes on. And, I'm quite an odd duck. What I do is when I'm listening to the book and I'm driving around, my eyes go from thing to thing. So it might be, a truck drives by and I see a word, or my eye goes to a sign on the side of the street or a license plate, or, something pops into my head from one of the previous books that are movies that I've experienced. And that is how I have come to interpret Mr. Book. And Mr. Book is basically saying that Bealzebub in his youth was a little devil, and what he did is he took innocent, and he put them into hermetically sealed glass containers in the book. That's what they call it. But I interpret it to mean human bodies. He takes souls and he puts them in human bodies, and he doesn't tell them what they are or what they're doing. And then they grow up thinking that they're human in a human body. And, it gets more complicated than that, because it takes people a very long time doing meditation to discover. You could read a book and it'll tell you this, a book on meditation. They tell you what to expect. But, experientially, if you don't do the meditation, then it's just some words and a story for girls and boys. But if you do meditate over a long period of time and you study what's going on in your mind and in your body, you do come to the conclusion that what they say is true, that you are not your body, and you are definitely not the thoughts that go through your head. So, meditate if you will, and see if that is true for you. Don't take my word for it. I never take anyone's word. I always test what they say, because there are more liars on this planet than there are truth sayers. Okay, so anyway, Bealzebub in his book tells how he was so pleased with himself because he locks people away in human bodies and makes them think that they're human, and all the emotions and thoughts that go through their head and the worries and the fears. That's a really big part of being human, is you are susceptible, because the body does give you feelings. And everyone knows that some feelings are very wonderful and blissful, and some are absolutely horrible, painful, and terrorizing, and the whole human experience is the whole gamut of these kind of things. But he takes personal credit for putting souls into human bodies and basically putting them into a world full of lies. And then you have to wonder, because if you've ever heard the lectures or books of Dolores Cannon was a hypnotic regression person. And she took, I can't tell you how many people that she hypnotically regressed, but she was a very old lady when she made her lectures, and you can assume she did thousands of people in her lifetime. And every single one of them, once she got them into a deep state of hypnosis, they all told her the same thing. Now, I encourage you to go onto YouTube and find Dolores Cannon and listen to what she tells you, because it's just, it's not like a snippet. There's a lot of information that comes out when people are in deep, deep hypnosis. And whether it's truthful or not, well, I wish you would just pause me right here. Go listen to Dolores Cannon and then come back and I'll pick it up for you. But the point that I wanted to make about Dolores Cannon's is that she says that on planet Earth, not all people that you see are real people, which is very weird. But if you think that Mr. Bealzebub has put people into bodies, he's certainly capable of making, we'll call them androids or robot people that don't have souls in them, but are still programmed, to run around and act like people. So you don't know how many people that you meet are actually, let's call them souled people, and how many people are. Well, Dolores Cannon says from her work that she calls them background people. So they all look like human. They look identical to humans, and they're not. They're background people, and they're fill-in people. So how many real people are actually here in your world? I don't know. I don't know, but this is what Dolores Cannon says. And in the old days when I used to do muscle testing, I got similar information to what Dolores Cannon is saying. I got the information that there are souled humans and there are spirit humans, when I used to use that kind of terminology. So I would say the only problem is that when you do muscle testing, you're using the human body. And, you know, if it's Bealzebub who is basically running the show and running your human body, it casts doubt on what you get from muscle testing. And given the fact they've already said that this is a planet of lies, maybe the whole thing is a big story for girls and boys. But, you know, while you're here, you do get certain trains of thought that come through. And, you know, these are the ones that I'm having now. So is it Bealzebub or Gurdjieff who is speaking through me right now? I don't know what the source of all this information is, other than I'm referring to books that I have read and, you know, lectures that I've heard on YouTube and movies and things. So, I mean, there's my database of stuff that I've experienced, and then how it all gets put together, the magic of telling a story. It's way more complicated than simple. But what do you want to do with this information, Mr. Gurdjieff's book? Well, I go on a quest, and the quest is to figure it out. And have I figured it out? No. But I like to make my videos so that I can at least document and diarize what was going on at the time when I made the video, and then I move on to the next topic. Now, the other thing that I will tell you is that I use the term reality boxes a lot. And that is from the great psychic and remote viewer Ingo Swann. Reality box is basically a mind map to what's going on. And I jump from reality box to reality box because it's very useful. So today, even though I'm talking about Gurdjieff and Bealzebub, tomorrow it's very possible that I will drop the whole subject completely and move into perhaps Anne Rice. Because Anne Rice talks about beings called Brevena. And when I see license plates like this one, BVHA, to me that means Brevena. And Brevena are from her vampire books, Prince Lestat and Atlantis, and they're basically nasty extraterrestrials that spy on humans, and they're what's known as louche demons. In other words, they get off on human pain and suffering, and animal pain and suffering. So there's your lecture on Gurdjieff, and what you want to do with it? Well, like I said, go test it, go meditate, and maybe get a good book on meditation. J. Donald Walters. Waters or Walt? I think it's Walt. J. Donald Walters is very good. He was a student of Yogananda. But, you know, whatever comes your way is probably going to be most useful for you. Hope you've enjoyed my talk today. My name is Jesperson. Why? Well, it's just a curious name that pops into my head over the years. See ya.